Millionaire sees girl begging and holding sign, "I need a father for my birthday." What he did surprised everyone, but what he discovers made him paralyzed. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Richard Hawthorne's black Mercedes purred to a halt at the red light on Fifth Avenue. At 54, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, but today felt different. The autumn rain streaked down his tinted windows, blurring the world outside into watercolor smudges of grey and gold. His phone buzzed incessantly on the leather seat beside him. Another board meeting, another acquisition, another million-dollar decision that would barely register in his consciousness. 27 years of building Hawthorne Industries had taught him that success was measured in numbers, not emotions. Then he saw her. A small figure huddled under a faded pink umbrella on the sidewalk corner. Richard's driver's side window faced her directly, and even through the rain-distorted glass, he could make out the words scrawled in purple crayon on soggy cardboard. "I need a daddy for my birthday." The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her blonde hair hung in damp strands beneath a worn baseball cap, and her tiny fingers gripped the sign with desperate determination. She wasn't begging for money, just standing there, holding her message to the world like a prayer written in crayon. Richard felt something crack in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. His hand moved instinctively toward the window control, then stopped. What was he doing? He was Richard Hawthorne. He solved problems with checkbooks and contracts, not whatever this was. The light turned green. His foot remained on the brake. Behind him, a taxi honked impatiently, but Richard couldn't look away from the little girl. She caught his gaze through the window and offered him a tentative wave with her free hand. That simple gesture, innocent, hopeful, heartbreakingly sweet, shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. "Sir?" His driver, James, glanced in the rearview mirror with concern. "The light's green." "Pull over," Richard heard himself say. "Sir?" "Pull over, James, right here." The Mercedes slid to the curb with practiced precision. Richard's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the door handle. When was the last time his hands had trembled? The rain hit his expensive suit the moment he stepped onto the sidewalk, but he barely noticed. The little girl looked up at him with eyes the color of summer sky, wide with curiosity rather than fear. Up close, he could see that her clothes, while clean, had been mended multiple times. Her sneakers had holes near the toes. "Hi," she said simply, as if wealthy strangers approached her every day. "Hello," Richard managed, his voice rougher than intended. I saw your sign." She held it up proudly, water dripping from the corners. "Do you think anyone will see it? Grandma Martha says sometimes people are too busy to notice things, but I thought maybe if I stood right here." She gestured to the busy intersection with the confidence of a child who believed in miracles. "When's your birthday?" The question escaped before Richard could stop it. "Tomorrow." Her smile could have powered the city. "I'm going to be 7 and Grandma's making me a cake," but the smile faltered just slightly. "All the other kids at school, their daddies come to their parties. I just thought maybe." Richard knelt down on the wet sidewalk, not caring about his $1,000 suit. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma. Emma Rose Peterson." She tilted her head, studying his face with the intense curiosity of childhood. "You have sad eyes. Are you lonely too?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Here he was, one of the most powerful men in the city, and a 6-year-old had seen straight through to his soul with a single glance. "Maybe I am," he whispered. Emma nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. "Well, then maybe we can help each other." And as Richard looked into those impossibly blue eyes, he had no idea that in 24 hours he would discover a truth so shocking it would bring him to his knees on this very corner, changing not just Emma's life, but rewriting everything he thought he knew about his own. Richard's phone buzzed incessantly as he walked beside Emma through the rain-soaked streets. Board meetings, acquisition deals, stock reports, none of it seemed to matter anymore. A 6-year-old girl with a cardboard sign had somehow shifted his entire universe in the span of 10 minutes, leaving him feeling unmoored from everything he thought he knew about himself. "Are you really, really rich?" Emma asked, skipping over a puddle with practiced precision, her small hand occasionally reaching out to steady herself against his arm. "Some people might say that," Richard replied carefully, surprised by how natural it felt to slow his normally brisk pace to match her shorter steps. "Good, then you can buy lots of birthday cake." Emma's logic was unshakable, delivered with the confidence of someone who had clearly given this considerable thought. "Grandma Martha makes the best chocolate cake in the whole world, but she can only afford to make one. If you're rich, maybe we can have 2, or 3, or maybe even a whole cake mountain." They stopped in front of a narrow brownstone, squeezed between 2 larger buildings, like a book pressed between encyclopedias. The facade needed work, cracked steps, peeling paint around the windows, but someone had lovingly tended to bright flower boxes, overflowing with autumn chrysanthemums that seemed to glow despite the grey day. "This is home," Emma announced, bounding up the steps with renewed energy. "Grandma Martha, Grandma! I found him! I found the perfect daddy!" The front door opened before Emma could reach for the handle, revealing an elderly woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and silver hair pinned in a neat bun. Martha Peterson moved with careful grace despite her obvious age, her flour-dusted apron suggesting interrupted baking. She took one look at Richard's expensive suit and raised an eyebrow with the practiced expression of someone accustomed to managing unexpected situations. "Emma Rose, what exactly did you find?" "Ah," Martha's voice carried gentle authority, mixed with barely concealed worry, the tone of a grandmother who had learned to expect the unexpected from her spirited charge. "A daddy for my birthday party, just like I planned." Emma gestured dramatically toward Richard, her whole body practically vibrating with excitement. "His name is Mr. Richard, and he has a fancy car and sad eyes like mine sometimes, and he stopped when nobody else would." Martha's gaze moved to Richard, taking in his expensive suit, uncertain posture, and the way he seemed simultaneously drawn to and overwhelmed by Emma's enthusiasm. For a moment something flickered across her weathered face. Surprise? Recognition? It passed too quickly to identify, leaving Richard with the unsettling feeling that he was missing something important. "Ma'am, I apologize," Richard began, suddenly aware of how this must look to a protective grandmother. "Your granddaughter was standing in the rain with her sign, and I couldn't just drive by. I hope I haven't overstepped any boundaries by bringing her home. I just wanted to make sure she was safe." "Nonsense." Martha's smile was warm, but her eyes remained watchful, studying Richard with the intensity of someone piecing together a complex puzzle. "Any man who stops for a child in the rain has a good heart, wealthy or not." She extended her hand with formal politeness. "Martha Peterson, Richard Hawthorne." Martha's grip faltered almost imperceptibly at his name, her fingers going momentarily slack before she recovered her composure. "Hawthorne," she repeated slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "An interesting name, not common around here, or anywhere really." "Can he come to my birthday party tomorrow, Grandma? Please, please, please." Emma bounced on her toes, her hands clasped together in supplication. "He looks like he needs cake and friends and maybe some smiling practice, and I promised I'd help him not be lonely anymore." Martha studied Richard's face with unsettling intensity, her eyes searching for something he couldn't identify. After a long moment that felt like an eternity, she stepped aside and gestured toward the doorway. "Well, Mr. Hawthorne, it seems you've received a very special invitation. The question is, will you accept?" As Richard stepped into the modest home, filled with the scent of vanilla and cinnamon, he had no idea that Martha Peterson had been waiting 3 long years for someone with his exact name to appear at her door. Richard arrived at his office the next morning with Martha Peterson's address burned into his memory and questions churning through his mind like a storm he couldn't quiet. Something about yesterday felt orchestrated, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly why. The old woman's reaction to his name, the way she'd studied his face with such intensity, it nagged at him like a melody he couldn't quite place, familiar yet frustratingly elusive. His assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission, carrying a stack of files that represented millions of dollars in pending deals. "Mr. Hawthorne, I've prepared the contracts you requested for the Johnson merger, and the legal team needs your signature on the Patterson acquisition documents. Also, the board meeting has been moved to 3 o'clock, and, sir, are you all right?" Richard realized he'd been staring out the window for the past 20 minutes, watching people move through their lives 40 floors below, like ants following invisible paths. Each person down there had their own story, their own secrets, their own moments of unexpected connection. "Fine, Sarah. Actually, I need you to do something for me. Something personal and discreet." Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly. Personal requests were unprecedented in their 5-year working relationship. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne, whatever you need." "I need a comprehensive background check. Emma Peterson, age 6, lives on Maple Street with her grandmother Martha Peterson." He handed her the address written on expensive letterhead, his handwriting uncharacteristically shaky. "Full report by noon. Use our most thorough investigator, the one who handles sensitive acquisitions." Sarah nodded, though curiosity flickered in her eyes. "I'll handle it personally and ensure complete confidentiality." By 11:30, Richard sat behind his massive mahogany desk with trembling hands as he opened the investigator's report. The pages felt heavy with possibility and dread. Emma Rose Peterson, born October 15th, parents deceased in automobile accident, legal guardian Martha Peterson. But it was the gaps in the information that troubled him most, holes in the narrative that made no logical sense. No birth records filed with the city for the first 3 years of her life. No social security number issued until age 4. Hospital admissions for severe head trauma at age 3, with no listed next of kin or emergency contacts. Educational records beginning only when she entered pre-kindergarten at age 4. It was as if Emma Peterson had materialized out of thin air as a toddler, a ghost child who had somehow acquired substance and identity. His intercom buzzed with sharp insistence. "Mr. Hawthorne, there's a Martha Peterson here to see you. She says she needs to speak with you immediately about Emma's birthday party tonight." Richard's coffee cup paused, midway to his lips, the liquid growing cold as realization dawned. "Send her up immediately." Martha Peterson entered his executive office, wearing a navy dress that had clearly seen better years, but was impeccably maintained, every button polished, every seam straight. She carried herself with quiet dignity that seemed unimpressed by the marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and panoramic city views that usually intimidated visitors. Her eyes swept the room with calm assessment before settling on Richard with laser focus. "Impressive," she said, glancing around with the detached observation of someone cataloguing details rather than admiring wealth. "Though I imagine it gets terribly lonely up here among the clouds, separated from the rest of humanity by glass and steel. Mrs. Peterson, about tonight's party, you ran a background check on us." Her statement hit like a physical blow, delivered with matter-of-fact certainty that left no room for denial. "Did you honestly think I wouldn't find out? Harold from my building works security downtown, and word travels fast in small circles. when wealthy men start asking questions about little girls. Richard had the grace to look embarrassed, heat creeping up his neck like a schoolboy caught in mischief. I wanted to ensure Emma's safety and understand the situation better. Safety? Martha's eyes blazed with protective fury that transformed her grandmotherly appearance into something formidable. From whom exactly, Mr. Hawthorne? The mysterious stranger who appeared from nowhere and inserted himself into a vulnerable child's life? Or from whatever ghosts and demons are clearly chasing you through your own past? The accuracy of her observation stung like ice water thrown in his face. Richard moved to his floor-to-ceiling windows, studying the ant-like figures moving through their lives on the street below, each person carrying their own burdens and secrets. I don't know why I stopped yesterday. I don't usually involve myself in children, and I don't typically. No, Martha said softly, her voice losing its sharp edge and becoming infinitely gentler. I don't imagine you do. But Emma saw something in you yesterday, something you've forgotten about yourself, something that called to her across a crowded street corner. When Richard turned around, Martha was examining the single personal photograph on his otherwise sterile desk. A silver-framed image he'd forgotten was there, pushed behind reports and forgotten in his daily focus on numbers and deals. His breath caught in his throat as memories crashed over him. Your family? Martha asked, her voice carrying a strange gentleness that seemed to wrap around old wounds. The photograph showed a much younger Richard with a beautiful dark-haired woman whose smile could light up rooms, and a toddler with golden curls that caught sunlight like spun gold. My wife Catherine and my daughter Anna, car accident 7 years ago. I lost everything that mattered in one terrible night. Martha was quiet for so long that Richard wondered if she'd heard him, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph with reverent care. Then she reached into her worn leather purse with trembling fingers that betrayed her emotional composure. Mr. Hawthorne, she said carefully, her words measured and deliberate, some coincidences are too significant to ignore, too perfectly timed to be mere chance. Some meetings are destined, orchestrated by forces we don't fully understand. She placed a sealed envelope on his desk with the solemnity of someone delivering sacred documents. Perhaps it's time you understood why Emma's birthday party tomorrow might mean more than you realize, and why a little girl's simple wish for a daddy might be the answer to prayers you stopped believing could be answered. The community center buzzed with the controlled chaos of 23 children celebrating Emma's 7th birthday, their voices creating a symphony of laughter and excitement that seemed to bring the sterile room to life. Streamers in every color imaginable hung from the ceiling, balloons bobbed and weaved through the crowd like colorful fish, and the air smelled of sugar, vanilla, and childhood joy. Richard stood near the punch bowl, having long since abandoned his tie and rolled up his sleeves, watching Emma orchestrate her small kingdom with the infectious confidence that only children possess. Mr. Richard! Lazy, Emma materialized at his side like a purple butterfly, wearing a dress clearly sewn by loving hands, complete with sparkly butterflies appliqued along the hem that caught the fluorescent lights. Did you see? Everyone came. Even Sarah Martinez brought her baby brother, and Mrs. Wilson from next door came with her granddaughter. It's like the whole world wanted to celebrate with me. Richard knelt to her level, a gesture that was becoming as natural as breathing, something he couldn't have imagined doing just days ago. It's absolutely wonderful, Emma. You look beautiful, and this is the best birthday party I've ever attended. She beamed with pride, her whole face glowing with happiness, then leaned conspiratorially closer, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper. Grandma Martha made 2 whole cakes because she said you looked hungry yesterday and she wanted to make sure you got enough. The chocolate one's just for grown-ups because it has coffee in it and makes kids too excited, but the vanilla one has rainbow sprinkles just like I asked for. Before Richard could respond, A small boy with chocolate frosting smeared across his cheek and party hat askew tugged insistently on Emma's dress. "Emma, Emma, time for birthday wishes!" "Mrs. Peterson says we have to sing the song now." "Oh, yes!" Emma clapped her hands together with unbridled excitement. "Mr. Richard, you have to help me blow out the candles. Grandma Martha says if two people blow together, the wish is twice as strong." Richard found himself swept into the traditional birthday song, his deep baritone blending surprisingly well with 23 gloriously off-key children's voices and a handful of proud parents. The cake appeared as if by magic, 2 layers of vanilla perfection covered in pink frosting and decorated with 7 colorful candles that flickered like tiny stars in the fluorescent lighting. When the song ended with enthusiastic applause, Emma closed her eyes tight, her entire face scrunched in intense concentration, her small hands pressed together as if in prayer. The room fell completely silent, even the youngest children seeming to understand the sacred nature of birthday wishes. Richard felt his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name, watching this little girl who had somehow transformed his world in less than 48 hours. When she opened her eyes and blew out all 7 candles in one determined breath, the children erupted in celebration, cheering and clapping as if she'd accomplished something truly magical. Maybe she had. "What did you wish for?" demanded Tommy Martinez, the boy with the chocolate-smeared face, bouncing on his toes with curiosity. Emma's eyes found Richard across the flickering smoke of the extinguished candles, and her smile held secrets and hope and something that made his heart skip. That's a secret wish, and secret wishes are the most powerful kind. But she glanced at Martha, who was watching from the kitchen doorway with tears glistening in her eyes, and nodded encouragingly. "I wished for something I thought was impossible. Something about families and love and finding people you thought were lost forever." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the suddenly quiet room. And maybe it's already starting to come true. Later, as parents collected sugar-crashed children, and Richard found himself automatically stacking chairs and collecting abandoned paper plates, Martha approached with 2 cups of steaming coffee that smelled like comfort and home. "She's never been this happy," Martha observed, watching Emma carefully pack leftover cake into containers for her friends to take home. "Not since she's been with me, and maybe not ever. There's something different about her today, something that wasn't there before yesterday." "Matilde, she's an extraordinary child," Richard replied, accepting the coffee gratefully and realizing that his hands had finally stopped shaking. "Yes, she is." Martha's voice carried weight that seemed to press against his chest. "Mr. Hawthorne, there's something we need to discuss before you leave tonight. Something about Emma's past that you need to know, something that will explain everything that's been happening." Richard felt ice form in his stomach, cold tendrils of dread spreading through his veins. What kind of something? Martha glanced across the room, where Emma was demonstrating some elaborate dance move to her remaining friends, her laughter bright as silver bells. The kind that changes everything you thought you knew. The kind that explains why a little girl with no memory of her early years was mysteriously drawn to a complete stranger on a street corner. She handed him his coffee with steady hands, despite the tremor in her voice, the kind that might finally explain why she calls out a different name in her sleep every single night. Richard's throat felt like sandpaper. What name? Martha's eyes were infinitely sad and infinitely kind, filled with 3 years of waiting and hoping and protecting a terrible, wonderful secret. Anna. She calls for someone named Anna, crying in her dreams for someone she can't remember but can't forget. Richard's coffee cup slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the linoleum floor in an explosion of ceramic and coffee that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent room. The sound reverberated through his consciousness as one impossible word rang through his mind like a bell. Anna, his daughter's name, his dead daughter's name. Mr. Richard. Emma's worried voice cut through the roaring in his ears like a lifeline. Are you okay? You look like you saw a ghost or something. Richard looked at the little girl standing in the scattered pieces of his broken cup. Her blue eyes, exactly the impossible shade of Catherine's eyes, filled with concern and love, and felt his entire world tilt off its axis and spin into uncharted territory. Richard sat in his car outside Martha's brownstone at 2 a.m, the engine long since cooled, the envelope Martha had given him still unopened on his passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate his carefully reconstructed life. 3 hours had passed since Emma's birthday party ended. 3 hours of driving aimlessly through the city's empty streets, his mind racing with impossible possibilities that his rational businessman's brain refused to accept. Anna, his daughter's name, spoken by a child who couldn't possibly know it, unless the universe was playing a cosmic joke so elaborate and cruel that it defied comprehension. The envelope seemed to pulse with contained secrets in the dim streetlight, its aged paper and careful handwriting promising answers he wasn't sure he was ready to receive. Finally, with hands that shook like autumn leaves, he found the courage to tear it open. Inside lay a folded letter in Martha's careful handwriting and something else that made his breath catch. A small photograph, creased with age and handling, its edges soft with time. His hands trembled violently as he held the photo under the amber glow of the streetlight, studying every detail with the desperate intensity of a man trying to solve the puzzle of his own existence. It showed a toddler with blonde curls that caught hospital lighting like spun gold, bright blue eyes that seemed to look directly into his soul, sitting on a narrow hospital bed and clutching a stuffed elephant that had clearly seen better days. On the back, someone had written in clinical handwriting, Jane Doe, age approximately 3, found October 2018. Severe head trauma, no identification, no family located. The letter was brief but devastating, each word precisely chosen to deliver maximum impact. My dear Mr. Hawthorne, if you're reading this letter, then fate has finally brought you to us, and the waiting is over. 3 years ago, a little girl with severe head trauma and no memory was brought to the pediatric ward where I worked as head nurse. No identification, no family to claim her, no past that anyone could trace. She'd been found days after a terrible accident, miles from any known crash site, as if she'd materialized from thin air. The couple who eventually adopted her, David and Sarah Peterson, good people who wanted children desperately, named her Emma Rose, hoping a completely fresh start would help her damaged mind heal from whatever trauma had stolen her memories. When they died in their own tragic accident 2 years ago, she came to live with me, the nurse who had helped piece her broken body back together. She has nightmares every single night, dreams of a woman with dark hair singing lullabies, of a man with sad eyes who looked at her like she was his entire world. She calls out for Anna in her sleep, begging this phantom person not to leave her alone. Your name was mentioned in old newspaper articles about a family tragedy that occurred around the time she was found. When you introduced yourself yesterday, I knew. Some miracles wear the face of coincidence, but this was never coincidence. With hope and trepidation, Martha. Richard's vision blurred as 7 years of carefully managed grief crashed into the impossible hope spreading through his chest like wildfire. He stumbled from the car on unsteady legs and up Martha's cracked front steps, pounding on her door despite the ungodly hour with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for salvation. Martha answered immediately, as if she'd been standing vigil by the window, waiting for this inevitable moment. She wore a faded robe and slippers, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, but her eyes were alert and filled with a complex mixture of hope and fear. It's her, isn't it? Richard's voice cracked like broken glass, years of suppressed emotion finally breaking through his carefully maintained composure. Emma is. God help me, she's my Anna, isn't she? Martha nodded slowly, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks like silver rivers in the porch light. I've been waiting so long for you to find her, praying every night that somehow, somewhere, someone was missing the little girl I was protecting. Where is she? I need to see her, I need to— She's sleeping, Richard. Martha caught his arm as he moved toward the stairs, her grip surprisingly strong. But you need to understand something crucial before you go up there. She doesn't remember you, doesn't remember Catherine, doesn't remember the life you shared. The trauma, the head injury, her memories of everything before the accident are completely gone, locked away, where even the best doctors can't reach them. Richard leaned against the doorframe, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was facing. How can she not remember? I'm her father. I taught her to walk, to say her first words, to tie her shoes. How can all of that just be gone? Memory is more fragile than we want to believe, Martha said gently, her voice filled with 3 years of medical knowledge and heartbreak. But love, Richard, love finds a way to transcend even the deepest trauma. She chose you on that street corner yesterday, didn't she? Some part of her heart remembered what her mind couldn't access. From upstairs came a small, frightened cry that pierced the night air like a blade through his heart. Grandma, Martha, the scary dream again. I can't find them. Both adults froze, the sound hanging between them like a bridge between past and present. Martha touched Richard's arm with infinite gentleness. She has nightmares about the accident every night, about losing people she can't remember but can't forget. Maybe tonight, you can help her understand that some lost things can be found again, that some dreams can have happier endings than we dare to hope. Richard climbed the narrow staircase on legs that felt like water, his heart hammering against his ribs with such force he was certain it could be heard throughout the small house. Each step carried the weight of 7 years of grief and the impossible lightness of hope reborn. Martha followed quietly behind, her presence both comforting and terrifying as they approached the moment that would either heal his broken heart or shatter it completely. At the top of the stairs, soft yellow light spilled from a small bedroom, warm and welcoming like a beacon in the darkness. Emma sat up in her narrow bed, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching the same stuffed elephant from the hospital photograph with desperate intensity. The room around her was a child's sanctuary, walls painted the color of sunshine, hand-drawn pictures of families taped everywhere, a small bookshelf overflowing with fairy tales and adventures. When she saw Richard standing in her doorway, confusion flickered across her tear-stained face like clouds passing over the sun. "Mr. Richard, what are you doing here so late? Did I do something wrong at my birthday party? Are you mad because I got frosting on your shirt when I hugged you?" Her voice was small and worried, the voice of a child who had learned too young that adults could disappear without warning. "No, sweetheart, absolutely not." Richard sat carefully on the edge of her narrow bed, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to sweep her into his arms and never let her go. "You didn't do anything wrong. You had a bad dream, and Grandma Martha thought maybe I could help make it better." Emma studied his face with the intense scrutiny that only children possessed. Her blue eyes, Catherine's eyes, undeniably Catherine's eyes, searching for something she couldn't name. "You look different than you did at the party. Scared, maybe? Sad? Are you having bad dreams too, Mr. Richard?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Can you tell me about your dream, Emma? Sometimes talking about scary things makes them less frightening." Emma's lower lip trembled, and she clutched her elephant tighter, as if it were an anchor in a storm she couldn't understand. "There's a lady with the prettiest dark hair, and she sings to me in a voice like angels. She smells like flowers, and vanilla and love, if love has a smell. There's a man too. He has sad eyes like yours, but they're happy, sad when he looks at me, like I'm the most wonderful thing in his whole world." Richard's vision blurred as she described Catherine with heartbreaking accuracy, every detail perfect despite her supposed amnesia. "They love me so much, it makes my chest feel warm and full and safe," Emma continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But then there are terrible loud noises like thunder but scarier, and bright lights that hurt my eyes. Everything gets dark and cold, and when I call for them, they don't answer. I search and search, but they're gone, and I'm all alone in the dark." Richard's hands shook as he reached out to touch her face, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek that he had kissed goodnight 1,000 times in another lifetime. "Emma, in your dream, what does the pretty lady call you? What name does she use?" Emma's brow furrowed in concentration, her small fingers working nervously at the elephant's worn fabric. Something different from Emma. Something that starts with A. Anna, maybe? Or Annie. It feels important, like it means something special, but I can't remember why. She looked up at him with those impossibly familiar eyes. "Do you think Anna is real, Mr. Richard, or is she just someone my brain made up?" From the doorway, Martha spoke with gentle authority, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years of secrets finally ready to be revealed. "Anna is very real, Emma Rose. Anna is the most real thing in the world." Emma's eyes widened, moving frantically between Richard and Martha as if trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. "I don't understand. How do you know about Anna? How do you know about my dreams?" Richard found his voice, thick with 7 years of suppressed love and grief. "Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Anna who lived with her mommy and daddy in a house filled with laughter and love. They loved her more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the fish in the sea, more than anything in the entire universe." Emma's breathing quickened, her small hands clutching the elephant with white knuckles. "What happened to Anna? Where did she go?" "There was a terrible accident, and Anna got hurt very badly. Everyone thought she was gone forever, lost in the darkness. But Anna was stronger than anyone knew. She forgot who she was for a while, forgot the people who loved her, and became Emma, a brave, wonderful little girl who brought joy to everyone she met." Richard's tears fell freely now, 7 years of bottled emotion pouring out as he continued. But deep inside, Anna never really left. She was just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up, and her daddy never stopped looking for her, never stopped hoping that somehow, somewhere, his little girl was still out there, still needing him. Emma stared at him for a long, heart-stopping moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then slowly, recognition dawned in her eyes like sunrise breaking over mountains. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched his face, tracing the lines of grief and love etched around his eyes. "Daddy." The word was barely a whisper, fragile as spun glass. "Are you my real daddy, the one from my dreams?" "Yes, baby girl. I'm your daddy, and I've been looking for you every single day since the accident." Emma launched herself into his arms with such force that they both nearly tumbled backward onto the narrow bed. 7 years of separation dissolved in an instant as she buried her face against his neck, sobbing with a mixture of joy and confusion and overwhelming relief that seemed too big for her small body. "I dreamed about you every night," she whispered against his shoulder, her words muffled but clear. "I knew you'd come find me eventually. I knew you wouldn't forget about me, even when I forgot about me." As Richard held his miracle daughter in his arms, feeling her heartbeat against his chest and breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, he understood that some stories don't end with tragedy. Some stories are just waiting patiently for their second chapter to begin, for love to find a way back home. The morning after the revelation brought harsh sunlight streaming through Martha's kitchen windows, illuminating a transformed world where impossible things had become reality. Richard sat at the scarred wooden table, official documents spread before him like battle plans, while Emma perched on Martha's lap, still in her pajamas, watching him with curious eyes that held fragments of yesterday's recognition mixed with today's uncertainty. Daddy. Ah, the word still sounded tentative in her mouth, as if she were testing its weight and shape. Are you really staying forever this time? Or is this like when I dream about the lady with dark hair and then wake up and she's gone again? Richard's coffee cup trembled in his hands. The legal papers before him, custody documentation, guardianship transfers, birth certificate corrections, represented months of bureaucratic battles ahead. But they were nothing compared to the delicate process of rebuilding a relationship with a daughter who remembered him only in fragments and dreams. I'm staying, sweetheart, I promise you that. He moved carefully around the table to kneel beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. But this is going to be different from your dreams. It's going to take time for both of us to learn how to be daddy and daughter again. Emma studied his face with the intense concentration she applied to everything important. Will I have to leave Grandma Martha because I love her too, and I don't want anyone else to go away forever? Martha's arms tightened protectively around the little girl. Nobody's going anywhere, Emma rose. We're all going to figure this out together, like a family should. Richard felt a stab of panic at the thought of taking Emma away from the only stable home she'd known. Martha's right. We'll take this slowly, carefully. Maybe I could start by visiting every day, having meals together, getting to know each other again. Like dating? Emma asked with 6-year-old logic. Except instead of boyfriend-girlfriend dating, it's daddy-daughter dating. Despite everything, Richard found himself smiling for the first time in years, a real smile that reached his eyes. Exactly like that. We'll go on daddy-daughter dates and learn about each other all over again. But even as he spoke the words, fear gnawed at his chest. What if she never fully remembered their life together? What if the trauma had stolen those memories forever? What if he couldn't live up to the father she deserved after 7 years of emotional numbness? Mr. Richard, Daddy. Emma slipped from Martha's lap and approached him cautiously. In my dreams, the sad man who looks like you. He used to read me stories. Do you think maybe you could read me a story today? Maybe it would help me remember better. Richard's throat closed with emotion. Reading bedtime stories had been their nightly ritual. Catherine curled up beside them as he voiced different characters and made Emma giggle with silly sound effects. I would love nothing more than to read you a story, baby girl. As Emma ran upstairs to select books, Martha placed a gentle hand on Richard's shoulder. This won't be easy, you know. She's not the same little girl you lost 7 years ago. Trauma changes children, shapes them in ways we can't always predict or understand. I know. Richard's voice was thick with determination and fear in equal measure. But she's my daughter, Martha. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm going to be the father she needs me to be. Emma returned, clutching 3 picture books, her face glowing with anticipation. As she settled beside him on Martha's worn couch, Richard opened the first book and began to read, his voice catching on familiar words that transported him back to another lifetime. For the first time in 7 years, Richard Hawthorne was reading his daughter a bedtime story. And for the first time since the accident, both father and daughter felt like they might actually be home. 3 weeks into their new routine, Richard found himself standing in the toy aisle of Hartley's department store, completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of options designed to capture a 7-year-old's imagination. Emma held his hand with casual confidence now, no longer treating him like a stranger who might disappear at any moment. but their relationship still felt fragile, like a butterfly landing on his palm that might fly away if he moved too quickly. "What about this one, Daddy?" Emma pointed to an elaborate dollhouse that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "It has real working lights and tiny furniture and even a little family that could live inside." Richard was prepared to buy her anything she wanted. 7 years of missed birthdays and Christmas mornings demanded compensation, but Martha had warned him about overwhelming Emma with guilt-motivated generosity. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. But remember what we talked about? We're taking things slowly, learning about each other. Why don't you tell me what kind of toys you really love playing with?" Emma considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important decisions. "Well, I like books best of all, especially ones about adventures and magic. And I like drawing pictures of families and houses and flowers. Oh, and I love puzzles because Grandma Martha says they teach patience." She paused, studying his face. "What kind of toys did Anna like? Before the accident, I mean. Was she different from how I am now?" The question caught Richard off guard. How did he explain that Anna had loved dress-up games and tea parties, had been obsessed with butterflies and fairy tales, had insisted on wearing her tutu to grocery stores and restaurants? This Emma seemed more serious, more cautious, shaped by loss and uncertainty in ways his original daughter had never been. "Anna loved butterflies," he said carefully. "She had a butterfly garden in our backyard, and she knew all their names. She used to say they were nature's flying flowers." Emma's eyes lit up with sudden interest. "I love butterflies too. Sometimes I dream about them, about chasing them through a big garden with yellow flowers everywhere." She paused, her brow furrowing in concentration. Was there a swing in the garden, a red swing hanging from a big tree? Richard's heart nearly stopped. Yes, there was a red swing under the old oak tree. Anna, used to swing so high she said she could touch the clouds." "I remember!" Emma's voice rose with excitement. "Not all of it, but pieces, like looking through colored glass. There was singing and laughter and someone pushing me higher and higher until I felt like I was flying." Her expression grew puzzled. "But then it gets all dark and scary, and I can't see the rest." Richard knelt down right there in the busy toy aisle, pulling Emma into a gentle hug. "The memories will come back when they're ready, baby girl. We don't have to rush them. We have all the time in the world to make new memories while the old ones find their way home." "Daddy?" Emma's voice was muffled against his shoulder. "Will you help me plant a butterfly garden? Maybe if we make it just like the old one, more memories will come back to visit." "We'll plant the most beautiful butterfly garden in the whole city," Richard promised, meaning every word. "And we'll hang a red swing from the biggest, strongest tree we can find." As they walked hand in hand toward the gardening section, Richard felt something shift inside his chest. He was no longer just trying to reclaim the past. He was actively building a future. Emma might never fully remember being Anna, but she was choosing every day to be his daughter in the present. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "Daddy." Emma looked up at him with Catherine's eyes and her own unique spirit. "I'm glad you found me. Even if my memories are all mixed up, I'm really, really glad you're my daddy." For the first time since the accident, Richard felt truly grateful to be alive. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Richard was helping Emma practice her letters at Martha's kitchen table, their peaceful routine shattered by the shrill ring of his phone. Child Protective Services, the voice explained with bureaucratic detachment, needed to investigate the unusual circumstances surrounding Emma's sudden change in guardianship and Richard's claim to biological parenthood. "I understand your concern," Richard said, stepping into the hallway where Emma couldn't hear, his businessman's composure barely masking his terror. "But I have documentation proving my paternity, medical records, and witness testimony from Martha Peterson, who has cared for Emma for the past 2 years. Nevertheless, Mr. Hawthorne, When a child's living situation changes this dramatically, especially involving a wealthy individual and a traumatized minor, we're required to conduct a full investigation. We'll need to interview Emma privately, assess the home environment, and verify all documentation. Richard's hands shook as he hung up the phone. 7 years of searching for his daughter, 3 weeks of careful rebuilding, and now bureaucrats with clipboards and forms threatened to tear them apart again. "Daddy." Emma appeared in the hallway, her small face creased with worry. "You look scared. Is something bad happening? Are you going away?" The fear in her voice nearly broke his heart. How many times had this little girl watched adults discuss her future while she waited powerlessly on the sidelines? "Come here, sweetheart." He scooped her into his arms, carrying her to Martha's living room, where family photos covered every surface like shields against uncertainty. "Some people from the government want to ask you questions about living with me," Richard explained carefully. "They want to make sure you're safe and happy, which is a good thing, but it might feel scary at first." Emma's grip on his shirt tightened. "Will they take me away? Will they put me in another family that doesn't know about my dreams or my butterfly memories?" "I won't let that happen," Richard promised fiercely. "You are my daughter, Emma Rose Peterson Hawthorne, and I will fight every single day to keep us together." Martha entered the room, carrying tea and wearing the expression of someone prepared for battle. "I've been through this before with Emma when the Petersons died. The key is showing stability, consistency, and genuine love. They need to see that this is what's best for Emma, not what's most convenient for adults." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of interviews, home visits, and psychological evaluations. Emma was questioned by kind but thorough strangers who asked about her feelings, her memories, and her relationship with Richard. She answered with the honest directness that only children possess, never embellishing but never hiding her growing attachment to the father she was learning to love again. "He reads me stories every night," Emma told the social worker, a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes and an official notebook. "And he's teaching me about butterflies, and he knows about my dreams even before I tell him. He looks at me like I'm the most important person in the whole world." "Are you happy living with Mr. Hawthorne and Mrs. Peterson?" the woman asked. Emma considered this with characteristic seriousness. "I'm happy, but it's also scary happy, if that makes sense. Like when you're on a swing going really high. It's wonderful, but you know you could fall. I love my daddy, but sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and this will all be another dream." That evening, as they waited for the final decision, Richard sat on Emma's bed, reading her favorite story about a lost princess who finds her way home. As he reached the happy ending, Emma interrupted with a question that caught him completely off guard. "Daddy, what happened to my first mommy? In my dreams, she's always there with you, but now she's gone. Did she go away like the Petersons did?" Richard closed the book carefully, gathering courage for the hardest conversation he'd ever had to navigate. "Your mommy, Catherine, died in the same accident that hurt you so badly. She's not coming back, Emma, but she loved you more than anything in the universe. She would be so proud of the brave, wonderful little girl you've become." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the remarkable resilience children possess. "Do you think she can see us now?" "Do you think she knows we found each other again?" "I think she's watching over us every day," Richard whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I think she helped guide me to that street corner where you were standing with your sign." Emma smiled through her tears. "Then we're still a family, aren't we? Just a different kind of family than before." As Richard tucked her in and kissed her forehead, he realized that his daughter had just taught him something profound about love, loss, and the infinite ways families can heal and reshape themselves around hope. The official call came on Friday afternoon. Emma Peterson Hawthorne would remain in Richard's custody, with Martha continuing as co-guardian to ensure stability during the transition. Richard felt 7 years of tension leave his body in one shuddering breath, but his relief was short-lived. Detective Sarah Chen called an hour later with news that would shatter everything he thought he knew about that terrible night 7 years ago. "Mr. Hawthorne, I know this case was closed years ago, but new evidence has come to light. We need to discuss the circumstances surrounding your family's accident." Her voice carried the weight of unwelcome revelations. "Can you meet me at the station this evening? And sir, you might want to prepare yourself. This information could be difficult to process." Richard arranged for Martha to watch Emma overnight, telling her only that he had important business to handle. As he sat across from Detective Chen in the sterile interview room, manila folders spread between them like landmines, he felt his carefully rebuilt world trembling on its foundation. "The original investigation concluded that your wife lost control of the vehicle due to weather conditions," Detective Chen began, her voice gentle but professional. "But we recently arrested a man named Marcus Teller for a separate crime, and during questioning, he confessed to something that happened 7 years ago, something involving your family." Richard's blood turned to ice water. "What are you saying?" "Teller was driving drunk that night, speeding on Highway 52. He sideswiped your car, sending it off the road, then fled the scene. Your wife wasn't at fault, Mr. Hawthorne. She was trying to avoid a head-on collision when she lost control." The room spun around Richard as 7 years of self-blame and guilt crashed into this new reality. "You're telling me someone else caused the accident? Someone who just drove away and let us believe Catherine was responsible?" "Teller's been carrying the guilt for years, drinking himself into oblivion. When we arrested him for his latest DUI, he broke down and confessed. He's willing to face charges now, finally take responsibility for what he did." Richard stood abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out on the city, where Emma was probably having dinner with Martha, blissfully unaware that her father's world was reshaping itself around this stunning revelation. "All these years I blamed Catherine. I blamed myself for letting them drive alone that night. I blamed God, fate, everything and everyone. There's more, Mr. Hawthorne." Detective Chen's voice grew even more gentle. "Teller described seeing a small child thrown from the vehicle. He was so drunk and terrified that he convinced himself the child couldn't have survived. He never reported it because he was fleeing the scene. But Emma, she did survive. She wandered for 2 days with a severe head injury before that hiker found her." Richard's voice broke as he imagined his 3-year-old daughter, alone and hurt, calling for parents who couldn't answer. "The remarkable thing is that she survived at all. The doctors say it was a miracle. The head injury that stole her memories also somehow protected her from more severe brain damage. She lost her past, but gained a future." Richard slumped back into his chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was learning. "Why are you telling me this now? Why not years ago?" "Because justice delayed isn't always justice denied, Mr. Hawthorne. Teller wants to face the consequences of his actions, and you and Emma deserve to know the truth about what really happened that night." "Do." As Richard drove home through the familiar streets, his mind reeled with questions about forgiveness, justice, and the random nature of tragedy and miracle. How did he tell Emma that their family had been destroyed by one man's terrible choices? How did he explain that sometimes the world was cruel and unfair, but sometimes it also offered second chances wrapped in impossible hope? He found Emma and Martha baking cookies in the kitchen, flour dusting their hands, and laughter filling the warm space. Emma looked up when he entered, immediately noticing his expression. "Daddy? You look like you've been crying. Did something sad happen?" Richard knelt beside her chair, taking her small, flour-covered hands in his. "Something complicated happened, sweetheart. Something about the night of the accident that we didn't know before." But whatever complicated things come our way, we'll face them together as a family. That's what families do. Emma studied his face with those wise blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. Is it the kind of complicated that makes people go away forever? Or the kind that makes families stronger? The kind that makes families stronger, Richard promised, pulling her into a fierce hug. Always the kind that makes us stronger. As he held his miracle daughter close, Richard realized that some truths were too heavy for children to carry, but that love was strong enough to bear any burden, heal any wound, and transform even the most devastating tragedy into a foundation for hope. The butterfly garden bloomed in Richard's backyard, like a promise kept, monarchs and swallowtails dancing among the marigolds and lavender that Emma had planted with careful precision. 6 months had passed since that first meeting on the rain-soaked street corner, and their lives had settled into a rhythm of healing and growth that felt both miraculous and utterly natural. "Higher, Daddy, push me higher!" Emma's laughter rang out from the red swing hanging beneath the ancient oak tree, her blonde curls streaming behind her like silk ribbons as she soared toward the cloudless sky. Each push sent her closer to the happiness she'd once thought was lost forever. Richard obliged, marveling at how completely his world had transformed. The corporate empire that had once consumed his every waking moment now felt like a backdrop to what really mattered. Bedtime stories, scraped knees, butterfly identification, and the 1,000 small moments that comprise the daily miracle of parenthood. "I remember this," Emma called out suddenly, her voice bright with discovery. "I remember flying high like this before, and someone singing while they pushed me. Was that my first mommy? Was that Catherine?" "Yes, sweetheart. Catherine used to sing while she pushed you on the old swing. You said it made you feel like you were flying to music." Richard's voice caught slightly on the memory, but it no longer hurt with the sharp edge of unhealed grief. Now it felt warm, like sunlight through stained glass. Emma dragged her feet to slow the swing, turning to face him with an expression of profound seriousness. "Daddy, I've been thinking about something important." Martha says thinking hard about important things is how we grow up wise, instead of just growing up tall. "What have you been thinking about, wise girl?" "About Marcus Teller, the man who hurt our family." Emma's words were carefully chosen, delivered with the gravity of someone much older than her 7 years. "You told me he said he was sorry and that he wants to make things right. Do you think we should forgive him?" The question hit Richard like a physical blow. For months, he had wrestled with his own feelings about Marcus Teller. Rage, grief, and slowly, grudgingly, something that might eventually become forgiveness. But he hadn't expected his 7-year-old daughter to grapple with such complex concepts of justice and mercy. "That's a very grown-up question, Emma. What do you think?" Emma swung gently back and forth, her feet dragging through the grass as she considered. "Well, being angry at him won't bring Catherine back and it won't change what happened to us, but maybe if we forgive him, it could help him stop being so sad and scared, and maybe it would help us stop carrying around all that heavy, angry feeling." Richard sat down on the grass beside the swing, pulling Emma onto his lap. "When did you get so wise?" "I think maybe I was always wise, but the accident made me forget for a while. Now the wisdom is coming back, just like my other memories." Emma leaned against his chest, her small body warm and solid and real. "Daddy, do you think Catherine would want us to forgive him?" The question pierced straight to the heart of everything Richard had been struggling with. "I think Catherine would want us to choose love over anger, healing over hurt. She always believed that forgiveness was something we did for ourselves, not for the people who wronged us. Then maybe we should try. Not all at once, because that would be too hard, but little by little, like how my memories come back." Emma twisted to look at him directly. "And Daddy? I think we should tell him about the butterfly garden and the swing and how we're happy again. Maybe that would help him not feel so guilty anymore." As Richard held his extraordinary daughter in their garden sanctuary, watching butterflies dance among flowers they had planted together, he felt the last pieces of his broken heart click into place. Emma had not only survived the worst tragedy imaginable, she had emerged with a capacity for grace and wisdom that humbled him daily. "You know what, sweetheart? Tomorrow is going to be a very special day." "Why? Is something wonderful happening?" "Every day with you is wonderful," Richard said, kissing the top of her head. "But tomorrow we're going to start writing the next chapter of our story, and this time we get to choose how it ends." Emma smiled, that radiant smile that could light up entire rooms and had changed his life on a grey October afternoon. "I love happy endings, Daddy. They're my very favourite kind." As the sun set over their butterfly garden and Emma drifted off to sleep in his arms, Richard realized that sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that refuse to end with tragedy, choosing instead to bloom into something even more magnificent than what came before. The meeting took place on a golden Saturday morning in Central Park, where families gathered for picnics and children's laughter echoed across rolling meadows like music. Richard and Emma walked hand in hand toward the designated bench, their steps synchronized after months of learning to move through the world together. Emma wore her favorite purple dress, the one Martha had sewn with butterfly appliques, and carried a small bouquet of flowers from their garden. Marcus Teller sat hunched on the park bench, a broken man in his 50s whose face carried the weight of 7 years of guilt and self-destruction. When he saw them approaching, he stood on unsteady legs, his hands trembling with a mixture of fear and desperate hope for absolution he didn't believe he deserved. "Mr. Hawthorne," his voice cracked like autumn leaves, I don't know how to. There aren't words for what I've done to your family." Richard felt Emma's small hand squeeze his fingers, drawing strength from her presence as he faced the man whose choices had shattered and ultimately transformed their lives. "Mr. Teller, this is my daughter Emma. She wanted to meet you." Marcus's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the little girl whose existence he had questioned for 7 years. "Dear God, you're real. You're alive and beautiful and—" He fell to his knees on the grass, overcome by the magnitude of what he was seeing. "I'm so sorry, little one. I'm so terribly sorry for what I took from you." Emma stepped forward with the fearless compassion that had become her defining characteristic, extending the bouquet toward this broken stranger. "These are from our butterfly garden. Daddy and I planted them together, and they grew into something beautiful, even though they started from tiny seeds buried in dark soil." Marcus accepted the flowers with shaking hands, staring at Emma as if she were an angel materialized from his deepest prayers for forgiveness. "How can you? After what I did, how can you give me flowers? Because carrying angry feelings is too heavy," Emma said with 7-year-old wisdom that silenced the entire world around them. "And because my daddy taught me that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can grow into the most beautiful things, if we let them." Richard felt his throat close with emotion as he watched his daughter, his miracle, his teacher, his greatest gift, offer grace to the man who had tried to destroy them. "Emma's right, Marcus. What you did was terrible, and it caused unimaginable pain. But running from it for 7 years has caused you pain too. Maybe it's time for all of us to choose healing over hurt." Marcus looked up from his kneeling position, tears streaming down his weathered face. "How do I make amends for something like this? How do I live with knowing I nearly killed a child and left a father to believe his family was dead?" Emma tilted her head with the serious consideration she applied to all important questions. "Well, you could help other people not make the same mistake you made. You could tell them about what happens when people drink too much and drive cars. You could help keep other families safe. And," Richard added, surprising himself with the words. You could remember that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to build something better from the pieces that remain. Marcus nodded slowly, clutching Emma's flowers against his chest like a lifeline. I've been sober for 8 months now. I volunteer at a rehabilitation center, sharing my story with people who are where I was 7 years ago. But I never imagined I might have the chance to face you, to ask for your forgiveness. Emma looked up at Richard, seeking guidance with her eyes. He nodded, understanding her unspoken question. Mr. Teller, Emma said solemnly, my daddy and I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because forgiveness is how broken hearts learn to love again. The sound that escaped Marcus was half sob, half prayer of gratitude. Thank you, both of you. I don't deserve this gift, but I swear to you, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. As they walked away from the park, leaving Marcus sitting alone with his bouquet and his second chance, Emma swung their joined hands like a bridge connecting past and future. Daddy, do you think Catherine is proud of us today? Richard looked up at the endless blue sky where butterflies danced on invisible currents and felt his wife's presence like warm sunlight on his face. I think she's very proud, baby girl. I think she knows that love won. It feels good to not be angry anymore, Emma said thoughtfully. It makes more room in my heart for happy things. Like what kind of happy things? Emma grinned, that radiant smile that had rescued his soul from the darkness. Like butterfly gardens and bedtime stories and having the best daddy in the whole universe. Like knowing that sometimes the saddest stories turn into the most beautiful ones, if you just keep believing in happy endings. As they walked home together through streets filled with ordinary miracles, couples holding hands, children playing, life continuing its eternal dance of loss and discovery, Richard realized that he had finally learned the secret Emma had known all along. Love doesn't end when people die. It doesn't disappear when memories fade. It doesn't diminish when tested by tragedy. Love transforms, love endures, love finds a way. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, love gives you a second chance to get the story right.